right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live coaching call with Nita Marketing. We've got our co-founder here, Qasim Aslam, who is joining us again. How are you doing, Qasim?
I'm living the dream, Janine. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Absolutely. We're going to be going into the best practices for step 3, which is selling your value proposition for Montessori. So we always struggle with this topic because we talk a lot. So I'm really, really excited to hear from your perspective, Qasim, as a marketer, but also a Montessori parent, because I feel like that, obviously that's the key target audience that we're looking for. But I'd love to get your perspective on this because we can get, this is a tricky one for us.
Well, honestly, I think it's a tricky one for everybody. I mean, even in my own business, when I'm not working with Nito, it's hard. We do Google Ads at Solutions 8 at my day job. And sometimes it's hard to remember everything that you know. And it's hard not to just, because you get so excited and you're like, oh my goodness, I can help you. And then you start spewing. And at the end of it, they've just glazed over. And they know you're smart now, like you've established some level of thought leadership, but you haven't really connected with them. And so I think what I want to talk about today from a specific implementation standpoint is how we connect with these parents. I'm going to say some things that might get me in trouble, but they're all said with love. I feel like Montessorians, from a sales perspective, approach from above, which is okay. It's actually okay to do a lot of the time. So it's the same way a doctor approaches from above. It's a little condescending. I know so much more about this than you will ever know. And I'm going to do my best to try to whittle it down so that I can answer your really stupid question in the simplest way possible. And then on the receiving end, that'll happen one time. Like I'll ask you a question and then I'll get that. And then I just will never ask another question. And, it's then deer in headlights. And I don't know that any of this is cognizant for either party. I think it's very subconscious on both levels. But I think it inhibits the communication. And I think that, and stop me, Deneen, if I just go way off the rails, but I've got kind of I'm a man on a mission today. I think the first thing I want to get across is that in order for us to properly connect with our parents, we have to ask questions. And so articulating the Montessori value proposition isn't about finding the right words to say yet. It's about figuring out who you're talking to. And I can tell you, because I've toured preschools and I've met with a lot of our members, and I don't feel like that's the first inclination. The first inclination is I have you. And, now it's like we're hunters with a scared rabbit and we want to pounce. But it's, I have you, and I'm going to try to tell you as much as I possibly can about what it is that we do before you leave. And there's a lot of reason for that. It's excusable because the people we're competing with don't do what we do. And we need folks to know that. The issue is we have so many features to offer, and not all of those are connect with needs. And so what we want to do first is identify the needs. And this is done through, it's almost an interrogation really, but I think that there needs to be a scripted sequence of questions that everybody at your school knows and has, and write it out. Now, I tried to templatize this before the call because I wanted to be able to offer an asset. And the problem is it's so specific to school program offering, et cetera. But I think we can start to maybe talk about some of those now. But we want to start with these questions so you start to get to know who these parents are. And you want to get personal. So things like, what is it that you're looking for in a school specifically? If it's not a preschool, it's an elementary school or whatever. What is it that you're looking for specifically? Well, what's most important to you? What are you afraid of? And pause. One of the other things that we do, I think, inadequately, and this is just, salespeople in general, is we have this list of 7 questions that I know I need to ask you. So I ask them all right now. And I'm like, here are my 7 questions. And now you're like, okay, rapid fire, trying to respond in sequence based off of memory. But I think it's what is most important to you in a preschool, full stop, and then say nothing. And those little silences, those really tense kind of meaty silences are always really scary in a tour or observation scenario. Like you want to feel like you need to fill the space. And I would caution everybody against doing that. I think that you pass that question over and you just let them deal with it, because chances are they've never, even though they may know the answer, they've never really kind of had to contend with that. So I want all of us to come up with really important, really leading questions for our parents. And I'm going to pause there for response because I feel like I've been talking too long.
No, I think these are all really, really great points. And I think Montessorians are natural at this, but we have to retrain ourselves because we're empathetic people.
Yep.
And we care so much about children and human development And the process of a parent making a decision to enroll in our school is no different than just, a short time in their life of making a very important decision for their child. So being able to hear their concerns and even address them without, because we know there are common themes of anxiety inside parents all over, whether they know it or not, it's subconscious. So if you can speak to that while also hearing their direct questions, then you give the control to them, and through this process, the goal, right, is clarity. So when they walk out the door, they are so clear about what your program is, what you offer, who you are as a school, what you value, so that when they come back to make that decision, because really we need to sell our program, it's easy for them. They are not left with more questions, they're left with answers, clarity, and a decision-making process.
I love what you just said about clarity. I'm writing that down actually, because I want to create a little asset on this. And the goal is clarity. That's brilliantly stated. So I've got a few questions in my brainstorm that I want to share, and I won't go through all of them because it can get really tedious, but I think the first question is really open-ended by design. It's what's important to you. And a lot of that is kind of an unfair trap, because they can just go anywhere. But what you're going to start to do is identify their value structure quickly, because I think they're going to start with the thing that they're most concerned about. But you want to keep them talking. And then I really like, and this is a sensitive one, but I really like is there anything that you're concerned about or anything that you're afraid of? And I like that specifically for parents, because oftentimes parents approach the situation with some trepidation. It's not just them evaluating your school. It's hoping that they're going to be the right fit as well, because there's this constant narrative like, hey, are we the right fit for each other? So I have a very rambunctious 4-year-old. And when I was shopping for preschools for him when he was 3, I'm going in there going, gosh, I hope y'all are ready for him. And it turns out that he's like mild-mannered now that I've seen all the kids. But, I didn't know. I haven't been around children as often. And so if somebody would ask me, hey, is there anything you're concerned about, anything you're worried about, anything you're afraid of? That would have been a really great space for me to just kind of have that air to say, well, now that you ask, my little guy bounces off walls. Is that a problem here? And then what's nice is you now know that that's an issue for me, and then you can speak to it. And then the third question that I think is critically important is, how are you going to decide? What criteria are you using to choose a school? And I like that question for 2 reasons. One, it lets you know now what to sell. And 2, one of the things that we're preparing is, we actually already have an article on this, but I want to build a checklist. It's a checklist for shopping for a preschool. And I want to be able to hand people that, because chances are they're going to say, gosh, I don't know. I hadn't really thought about that. And you can say, oh, well, we created this checklist and here you go. And by the way, and what's nice is you have your school there first and everything is checked, which is a little bit of, leading mentality. So I like those 3 questions. And then whatever other questions you think are pertinent to your school specifically that will lead to the features of your school that you want to articulate. And Deneen, how did that land? Do you think that's all well stated?
Yeah, we need a template for that.
We do. And that's on my list as well. I actually just had another idea that I'm writing down. There's so many ideas. There's so many things that we can do for Montessori schools. I've added a bunch of resources today, by the way. I've just been in the resources section. So if you haven't been in the resources section, we've got a bunch of new stuff, but there's more coming. Awesome. So questions first, and I'd like to come up maybe with some of those templated questions. I think that might be a little more difficult for us to do, but I think we can come up with the checklist. And the checklist is going to be a little genericized. Y'all can customize it for your school, but the benefit is if you put anything next to Montessori and then you really get granular with it, you've got rows, they're going to be able to get 1, 2, and 3, right? They'll probably get, safety and Clorox and full day, and then it's done. They don't have 100 years worth of pedagogical knowledge based off of, scientific method. Like none of that exists. So if we can break that down in degrees of granularity, I think that's important, but I don't want to rely too heavy on the checklist. So here's the next point on my mission today is, and I am more guilty of this than any human in the world because I'm very left-brained and I'm a super nerd. We talk about features all the time. And I can tell you when I toured schools and when I toured the Montessori school that my children go to now, which is great and I love, all they did was tell me about features. And I knew, even if you intellectually understand it, I didn't connect that to anything that I wanted. So there's an old mantra, and I know you probably hit on it last week, but it's features tell, benefits sell. And I think that what we need to do is constantly, it's okay to bring up the feature in the beginning. Multi-age classroom, that's great. If you just say multi-age classroom to me, that means nothing. But if you say multi-age classroom, and by the way, your child's going to learn how to lead, or your child's going to learn from other children, or learn how to engage, or, I'm going to expand the right. Now, all of a sudden, the features and the benefits are being connected in my mind in a way that's actually pertinent to me. And so I think we need to move from the feature conversation towards the benefit conversation. And what's really important about that is taking that checklist that we're handing people and really understanding what those benefits are on every single level. So if you're ever telling anyone anything about your school, period, there has to be a benefit attached to it. Because if it's just a feature, then that doesn't sell at all, and you're wasting your time. I hope that didn't come off as callous or.
No, but to the Montessori world's defense, there's a lot of misconception about what Montessori is.
Sure.
And what Montessori isn't. And so oftentimes we are engaging in those conversations of having to really clarify what authentic Montessori looks like. And that's just where our brain is at often, because those conversations will come throughout the day with parents, with colleagues, with, community members, people that have no idea who you are but want to learn more. So we end up having those feature conversations because we want to clarify what it is we offer and bust the myths, of what Montessori is and what it really isn't. But I think you're absolutely right in that we have to, because we do need to do that. We do need to make sure that we're clarifying what Montessori is, but have a benefit attached to it, which it's outcomes, right? What is the outcome? And Arshia actually talked on this last week about the specific fear that you described, which was, can my child do this? Are you sure he can be in the system? And all these other children have it put together. I just don't see my child doing that. So talking to the parents about empowering them and their children to really reach higher standards and a higher level. And that's Montessori, right? Because we are developing the human potential. And so we can talk on the benefits of that. It addresses fears. It gives them an opportunity to really think about how transformative this community can be for you. And then you kind of get away from the feature and you're talking about the benefits. So that was a lot, but I think you're absolutely right in that we need to highlight the benefits much more. Could we have something that we send home with, and maybe some of our members do this, home with people that tour, just, quick overview of what Montessori is and what Montessori isn't, like a myth buster, right? So having what it is and what it is not. Maybe some of our members do that already.
I love the myth buster. You said something that I think is really important. You mentioned that we go on the defensive because there's so many myths about Montessori that, and I think that, and I actually already see this happening now at our school with parents that are currently enrolled. They'll say, oh, well, Montessori is, and then you'll see one of the guys go, no, it's not. And then have to, and here's someone whose child has been there for 3 years. So it's really easy to have that send you on the defensive. I think the way to address that, and I'm using context from, my sales role in a different company, but anytime somebody comes into me and says, hey, I know Google's not going to work for me. I tend to, what they're looking for is they're looking for me to buttress that argument so we can have tension. And what I generally do is say something effective. Oh gosh, well, if that's the case, I'm sure you're right. And what's nice about it is it completely takes them back. And now I've dismantled their ability to be contentious. Now, we don't want to say to somebody who says, Montessori's not going to work for my child. We know, yep, you're right. But I think it's instead of coming back at them, I think there's a way to approach from above, which is going back to, well, tell me about what's important to you. What's the end goal? What's the end result? And then when they tell you that, now you get to sort of Trojan horse your way in to, well, let me tell you why Montessori is actually not just going to work, but way better than anything that exists because, and they might tell you something that shows that it's not a fit, which incidentally is a note, and I'm skipping ahead a little bit. If you have a parent tour your school and they are clearly not a mission appropriate fit for your school, that's an okay sales process to cut short. Now, that doesn't mean you kick them out of the tour, but it just means that you don't want to make the mistake of continuing to nurture an opportunity that is going to do nothing but cause you heartache and headache later. Because I can tell you, one bad review on Google or Yelp, the $1 billion extortionists, will cost you more than that potential parent could possibly help you. So it's okay if you see a nightmare come through the door to just, softly let them know like, hey, this actually might not be the right fit. It seems like you're really interested in, kind of this hardcore academia. Maybe this is a better approach for you, et cetera.
And that's important for the process too, because if you're able to do that and identify that the parent is just not the right fit, like that's almost relieving, because you have gone through the process of clarifying who you're truly looking for, what kind of values you're looking for, and making that decision early on is going to save you so much time and so much energy, and it validates the processes you have in place, which is pretty cool.
Absolutely. And Heidi just chatted in and said there's some terrific white papers on the NITO site that we've adapted that explain what Montessori is and isn't. Thank you so much, Heidi. You're such a rock star. And yeah, we've got 20 some odd white papers that are really robust. Matt wrote some of them himself. And we also have you looked at our blogs, by the way, recently?
Mm-mm.
2 years of like, we wrote a blog every week for 2 years. We have 100 some odd in there. Awesome. Some of them get 1,600 words long.
And those ones, the monthly ones, or the actual NITO blogs on the site?
No, the monthly ones, the ones that we write for our members.
Yes.
If you've got access to our blog content, you don't have to use those as blogs. Like those can be used and repurposed into anything you want if you wanted to create your own white paper. Which speaks to the next piece that I'd like to discuss from a sales perspective is we have to have a process. There has to be a sales process. And one of the things that I think is really going to help is the CRM, and I'll actually pull it up here. And I'm not selling the CRM, by the way, but it's nice because it visually articulates the sales process. But we need to have a process in place that we follow, because otherwise it's really easy to get lost and forget where you were with somebody. And what we don't remember is we're having this conversation 100 times a day, over and over and over and over and over. It's very routine to us. This is the first time this parent is ever hearing any of these things. And so it's okay for you if you skip a step. It's not okay for them. You're going to lose them entirely, and that bridge has not been built. And I think that creating a process will also help you figure out what's working and what's not, because if you create a process and then you track that process, and it can be something as easy as sticky notes. You can have a sticky note and write a family name on there, and then you have your segments, and then you move them from one segment to the other. And what you will find is there's going to be a segment that bottlenecks, and you're like, man, I've got way too many sticky notes here. And what that's doing is showing you, okay, this is where your process needs improvement. We need to figure out, why is it people drop off? Why can't we move people? Why can't we, find some level of resolution? And I'll show you that in the CRM here in just a second. And it looks like, oh, that's you, Deneen, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and this is all dummy data, just so everybody knows. If you haven't looked at our pricing section recently, we revised all of our pricing on the 1st, and our 2nd, 3rd, and 4th plan members all have access to the CRM. It's still something of a beta. It's based off of a white label software that we lease, and it's not exceptionally robust. So if you're used to like really hardcore, amazing CRMs like Salesforce or something, then this might disappoint you a little bit. But if you want something that's just easy to use, that's kind of what we were going for here. But what we have is the admissions pipeline mapped out in a visually articulated way. So here's a new parent inquiry, and we have one parent here, the daily family. And incidentally, again, you don't need a piece of technology to do this. This could be on a legal pad, or you could have a whiteboard on your school wall. But no matter what you do, please have a process in place, because the process allows you to know where the parent exists in that process, and also based off of where they exist, what you've said. Because when it comes to articulating our value proposition, there's a funnel, there's kind of a narrative, there's a story that we're telling. And you can tell that somebody who's, tour scheduled or tour complete, that there's very different connections that these people have with your school and how far they are in the story. What's cool about the CRM is we can drag and drop. So let's say the daily family is a new parent inquiry and then they schedule a tour. I can just drop them in to schedule a tour. And if I want to take some notes on them, I can take those notes here. The lead value, let's say they're worth $800 a month. I just have 800 in there. Tasks and notes specifically for that family. But what's nice about this is it allows us to track everybody through the entire admissions pipeline. And your pipeline might be a little bit different than this. This I actually stole from one of our members who allowed me to do that, of course.
One of the benefits, Costumes, pause you here, is at least the interactions I've had with schools recently, it tends to, if you've got an admissions director, this information tends to live with them. And so if they fell off the face of the earth, it goes with them. So this type of system is accessible to anybody. who can step in, your admissions director or whoever does your touring and that enrollment process, step into the role at any time, which I absolutely love and I'm a huge fan of, because, and then you can have other people give feedback and see if there's improvement opportunities.
Absolutely. And I think that's really important too, Deneen. What you just said is in this world where we're communicating with these parents, it's important to have, there's a symbiotic relationship happening. You always call us parenting partners, which I really like. But the admissions director needs to be fed information by, in sales, we call it the postmortem, which maybe I won't use here, but after the sale has been made, chances are that there are some, questions parents have, confusion, issues that need to be rectified, et cetera. Those are things that should be bottled and then brought into the sales process where you're managing expectations. Because I think one of the most important part about the sales process isn't just selling the good, it's preparing people for the bad. It's like, hey, by the way, we do 5 full days. Like that's a big deal. And we need to make sure that we're all on the same page, that this is the way that we approach this, assuming that that's the way you approach it. But the other thing that I think is really nice from a sales perspective is that starts to build some level of authority in my mind, because unlike a kinder care where we're just grabbing with both hands saying, please, send your children here. It's, this is why we're the right fit. This is why we're not. And there's a scarcity to it, I think, that people will respect and admire.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you position it well, it's hard for them to say no. They're going to want to be at your community because there's so many benefits to being there. Jeanette asked about if this software is a part of the NITO package.
It is. It's included in, and I'll just pull that up real quick. And this isn't meant to be a sales call, so I won't turn it into one. But it's included in the second plane, the basic facet of it. The third plane is much more enhanced, and at the fourth plane, it's advanced. But at the second plane, to be honest with you, it's so much. I mean, you get the contact management, the opportunity management that we're looking at, conversations with the parents. You can manage all the communication with all of your parents in one kind of unified application. So if you're interested, let me know.
Another question. Christina is asking if it integrates with Calendly for tour scheduling.
It actually replaces Calendly, and I don't know if that's good or bad. No, isn't that crazy? Especially because we're just huge Calendly lovers. But it has its own appointment widget, its own calendar that you create. And so I really like it, what they've built, but it would replace Calendly. And you can see, like here's the calendar setup. It has most of the settings that Calendly has. So you can define duration, add padding, minimum scheduling notice. There's a custom thank you message, etc. Define your dates, and then it also integrates with Google Calendar, so it'll have a read-write integration. What's nice about this, though, is anybody who schedules an appointment with you through this system automatically gets dropped into the contact record. So when I jump over to the contacts and I see John here, let's say John scheduled an appointment, then I would see the appointments here. And if I wanted to add a new appointment, I can do it directly from here. And if I want to communicate with John, I can do it directly from here.
And does it have proper tracking for ads?
It does. That's the very first thing we checked. It's still not perfect because nothing's perfect. We just found out that HubSpot, sadly, one of our members came to us and said, hey, I'm tracking a bunch of leads from Google CPC, but Google's saying that these, that we didn't get that many leads. And we looked into it and she's absolutely right. The cookie session in HubSpot stayed intact and it did not stay intact with Google Ads. And I don't want to say there's nothing we can do about that because there are steps that we can take, but in a lot of ways, we're dealing with really complex technological instruments that are all trying to talk to each other, and there's 50,000 different elements involved, and sometimes they don't connect all the way. So, our Google Ads report to her was actually still really good. It was, you got this many leads, and she came back to us saying, no, I think I got even more than that. And so it's never going to be a perfect one-on-one correlation, but we want to get as close as we possibly can.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Well, this is cool. And you've got some members on this right now who are enjoying it, right?
Some soft launch beta members. Yes, ma'am. We don't have a lot in the way of training videos just yet. I'm working on it. So if you want to hop onto the serum, I'm happy to have you, but just know that you're going to be something of a guinea pig. And I already have a few friendlies in queue that are guinea pigging for me. And then what's really nice about this is we're templatizing quite a bit. So, we'll have a templated tuition request campaign, for instance. Email 1 goes out, email 2 goes out, email 3 goes out, and then it's kind of a fill in the blank content section. And then I promised I wouldn't turn this into a sales call, so I won't.
Okay, wait, but so now is this replacing MailChimp?
It can, yes, ma'am. It won't be at the second. Yeah, it'll replace MailChimp, it'll replace Calendly, which is pretty cool. And what's nice is, because of MailChimp's pricing change, MailChimp was going to cost all of our third and fourth plane members some amount of money. This will be included in their membership, which is kind of nifty. We should do a coaching call just on the CRM. I think we have one scheduled, actually. It's in a couple months.
Okay. I mean, we should maybe do it sooner. I think people would be really excited to have this. Maybe we can do a Tuesday call.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to. But to go back to the point at hand, we want to make sure that we have a process in place. And what I like about this is it just kind of, it visually articulates the process that people go through. And then the other thing I wanted to say is when it comes to articulating the Montessori value proposition, you're never going to be able to get it all out right then and there. So I think when you're asking parents these leading questions, and if you have the opportunity to take notes, mental or otherwise, now why does Vimeo do this? Gosh darn it. Sorry, y'all. It's embarrassing. Well, you can still see it. If you have the opportunity to take notes, mental or otherwise, then what I'd recommend is following up with content that is relevant to a prospect and the questions that they were asking. And hopefully that content is not just you writing an email saying, hey, I know you're concerned a little bit about, you know, your 3-year-old being in a room with 5-year-olds. Here's my thoughts on it. Instead, you get to say, and let me find the video. Is it going to work for me? For some reason, it's not validating my session ID, so it's not pulling up. But we've got a ton of, just an immense amount of content. So one of the things that we just launched is a video library. We have almost 60 videos, parent education videos. This is available to our third and fourth plane. And it's not working, so I won't embarrass myself further and keep trying to pull them up. But the videos are amazing. We call them the Montessori Minute. And it doesn't just have to be the videos. It can be videos, blogs, articles, but have content ready. And there's so much content on our site already that you can use. A lot of it's free. Have the content on the site, and then when somebody tells you, when you say, hey, what's important to you? What are you afraid of? How are you going to be making this decision? Remember those answers and then follow up with an email. And that might be the most important thing, is follow up with something that says, hey, I remember you said that this was really important to you. I wanted to share this article with you that we have on whatever topic, because I promise you, nobody else is doing that. So all of the sales conversations that they're having, we want to make sure that we're rising above. And if you can follow up and you know, recall something that they said was critically important, and then provide a piece of content on it that was already or seemingly already on your site in case you went and added it, I think that that's going to be the type of thing that really helps connect and build relationships with some of these parents, relationships and trust.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and Christina said she'll be a guinea pig. So.
Oh, awesome. I didn't see that. Is that in your chat? Well,
so there's 2 ways. They can chat in or they can submit a question. So I'm watching the question one. The Q&A.
Oh, I didn't even know the questions existed. Shows what I know about Zoom. I'm supposed to be a tech guy.
Well, we can even get questions before a call, which is super cool.
Yeah, that is cool. We should start doing that. Be the source of the source. Talked about that. Making sure we have a process. Talked about follow-up. I'm done. The end.
Do you have any tips as far as closing sales?
Yeah, you have to ask for it. And my dad taught me this. My dad sells hand-knotted rugs, which I know is a big shocker. And when I was 17 or something, he was teaching me how to sell. And he said, you make whatever recommendation you're going to make, and then you shut up. And the next person who speaks just bought something. And if the customer speaks, they bought your rug. And if you speak, you bought their no, basically. And I realized that that might be a little too Glengarry Glen Ross for this particular context, but I do think that we need to say the words, hey, I think that this would be a great fit for your child. I really think that, you know, Sammy's going to thrive here. We'd love to have him. Would you be interested in enrolling in August? And that's okay to say. That's an okay thing to say. And what's so interesting is, and I do this all the time. I did this yesterday, by the way. We have a new hire. She's shadowing me on a sales call. And I just sat on the call, awkward as all get out, kind of like, well, what do you want to do? You know, like just horribly inadequate. And what I should have done is said, I know for a fact I can run this Google ad campaign. I'd be really excited to earn your business. Is this something that you'd be interested in moving forward with? So I think you have to ask for the sale. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And it's something that I still am not good at. So I'm being a major hypocrite here saying it, but I think it's a critically important step. We all need to hear that. You know, I mean, it's validating for the parent to hear. And say it verbally, say it in writing. You know, we think you'd be a great fit, and then explain why. So I'd say go straight for it and ask for the sale, assuming you think that they're a fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like that would be well received. I've seen that happen before, and I've done that before. And it's almost like, again, it's relieving because you're clear. You know, it's not, it may be awkward because they're maybe caught, they don't get that kind of directness often,
Right.
especially in Minnesota. We're like Minnesota nice and passive aggressive and whatnot. So the directness is a little bit awkward for us. But when it does happen, it's like, it's relieving, because it's like, okay, super clear. I know what the next steps are. I know that you are asking me, you're really calling me to action, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're calling me to do something, and partner with you. And I'd love to, so I like that process.
And I love what you just said, and partner with you. I think the other thing that you can start to do is seed in your value proposition in that type of language. So if you were to say in your ask, I'd love to be your parenting partner, now it's, yes, you asked for the sale, but you also just gave them something. Like, hey, the hardest job you've ever had in your entire life, that thing that terrifies you and keep you up at night, you want some help with that? Like, do you want me to help you with that? Or do you just want someone who's going to keep your kid in a box and keep him safe? I think that's a really good point, Janine. So yeah, I'd say, ask for the sale is important. And what was the original question? Just
how do you closing a sale?
Oh yeah, the other thing too is make it easy. And this is also something I'm being a big hypocrite with. So we had a conversation today with the same new hire that I mentioned, and she looked at our onboarding form and she goes, "This is scary." So I get a client. Imagine this. I'm a genius. I get a client. You just paid me money and signed up, and I say, "Hey, for the very first interaction that you and I will ever have, can you please suffer through this 90-minute horrible, tedious onboarding form where you repeat things that you told me, and we'd ask you for everything." And so I think that part of the sales process is that sales doesn't end after they've given you money, and that's critically important. It's kind of this like never-ending sort of cycle that you're placing yourself in, but make sure, and this goes right to having a process, make sure you know the very next step. Here's what's embarrassing, and it's happened to all of us, I'm sure. You ask for the sale. Hey, I think you're a great fit. I think your son or daughter would really thrive here. Would you be interested in enrolling? And they say, yes, great. And you're like, what do I do now? Like, what's the, and what you need to know is and everybody at your school needs to know, okay, the very next, I need you to fill this thing out or watch this video or, give me this form or, go get your shots or whatever it is. But you have to know if they say yes. You can't be like, oh, I wasn't prepared for this at all, which is a situation we've all been stuck in. So knowing your process and having it written down, and the minute, they've toured, then they need to do this, and then we do the in-home observation, and then I have to have them fill out this application. And if you can make the application, it doesn't have to be like fun, it's not something that people are seeking out, but if you can make it less painful than other people's applications, I think that also really helps with the sales process. You want them to have positive neural associations when they see your brand and your logo. And if you're handing them something that looks like something they get from their CPA, that's going to be a really, kind of really tough thing to pull together.
Yeah. How do you feel about like deadlines and the scarcity side of that, like to get them moving a little bit? Because my fear, and I'm sure all of us have experienced this, is we do that. The process is great. They walk away with an application and then crickets. And we follow up, maybe some more crickets, or they take a little while to respond. And then before you know it, you're like on the deadline. And either they do submit an application or it's a late application or whatever. So how do we get them moving without saying do it or go away? You know what I mean?
Yes, ma'am. And I have an answer to this in an analogy, actually. I've read that the most important thing on a first date is to schedule the second date. And so when you're out with somebody, it's nerve-wracking for all parties if you go out on a date and then you leave that date and now somebody has to call. And it's like, oh goodness, who's going to do that? And how long are they going to do it? And how long are they going to wait? And then when you call, you have to figure out. So while you're on the first date, the idea is, like you go out on a date and you're like, oh my goodness, you like the botanical gardens too? We should go there. And now you kind of have that, you've sort of, bookend this situation to where it's not separate, they're bridged. And I think we can do the same thing with this process. And marketing, by the way, is likened to dating all the time. And because they're very similar, like it's a relationship building, you're getting to know this person. So instead of handing them, here are the 7 things that I need you to do by the first of the month, bam, I think it'd be really interesting and maybe creative if there were one of those things that, hey, here are the 7 things, but this one thing, we need to get this done rather quickly. Can we just hop on a call tomorrow and I'll do this with you? Or something that kind of like seeds the thought that if you can just get them to take one step, they'll take all 7. But if you hand them 7 steps and then leave them to their own devices, chances are they're going to be left to their own devices. And because they're human and they have a bunch of things going on, they're not going to do it. But if you can get that one, that's why you'll often notice they do this in car dealerships. They come to you with this sales process, and then the first thing is checked off. Like, hey, we already have, and it's always something stupid. It's like, we already have your driver's license copied, and you've taken the test drive, so that's done. Now all I need is your social and your left arm and your income statements and whatever, and then we're going to be good to go. But there's a psychological impact to that first check mark. So if you can get them that very, very first check mark, then I think you're going to be way better off in getting them to continue that journey. And the more you can piecemeal it, the better too, as long as it doesn't cause you a managerial nightmare.
I like that. Huh. Because I bet most of us do just hand an admissions packet with 7 to 10 things to do. And then it's like, I wonder, what could that be? So you just call them tomorrow? Like, so you had a tour today, you call them tomorrow and you go, like, let's walk through the process together, and maybe even doing, some of us have online forms too.
I'd love to see a goal setting form. So if there were a Montessori goal setting form, so I'd say, hey, Deneen, I think your son's going to be a great fit. Here's the admissions packet. By the way, we have a goal setting form in there that I'd like to do with you. Do you have some time tomorrow to hop on a phone call? Like, can you say no to that? Can anybody say no to that? And then it has to be something easy. It's like, do you have 10 minutes tomorrow to hop on a phone call? And there's no human alive that can't squeeze 10 minutes out for their children. And then your job is to really make it 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever. So then you schedule the call in Calendly and you hop on and you say, okay, there's 5 questions. Hopefully you've had the opportunity to look at the document. I just want to go over this with you because I want to make sure that now that we're parenting partners, that I'm actually on the same page. And let's talk about the goals that you have for your son or your daughter. And now you get to say, like, hey, you know, he's not reading as quickly as I kind of thought he would. And then I get to, like, kind of assuage your fears a little bit, establish myself as a thought leader. But now we have the goal sheet figured out. And now you get to say, hey, you know what? Check that one off your list. I already have it in your file. The very next one is, and then you kind of like, now we're sort of, you know, we've got our bait and lure, and that's a bad analogy, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. And that is huge. What a good idea. Like, so of course, right, because you give them about 24 hours-ish to you know, digest what they just experienced, which is hopefully something super amazing. But then you're coming back and again showing them that you know child development well, but you're also really curious about their individual journey, and having that revisiting that particular conversation. As a parent, I would love that. I imagine the competitors are probably not doing that.
Oh, goodness. You know what I love about the goals, too, is it gives you something to speak to at every single possible intersection. Because if you and I set goals together, no matter how obscure or opaque they are, I get to call back on those goals. So, you know, parent-teacher conferences, you know, parent education sessions, whatever. Hey, remember when we talked about this? A, are these still your goals? Or, you know, have we accomplished some? Do we move on? And then B, these are some of the things that we've been doing or thinking. And that's something you can share with, you know, guides. Like, that's real relationship building. And it's the very first thing you did. So when we talked about the first thing, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be fun, but if I were a parent and you want to talk to me about goals for my kids, like, I've got the next 30 years for them planned. That would be my favorite topic in the whole wide world. And I realize none of that's going to happen. And I'm on the phone with a bunch of Montessorians, so forgive me, but I may type. So yeah, I think that could be really fun. I wonder if there's a goal setting template we could build.
I'm sure there is. Absolutely.
And
you could even incorporate that in your process so that parents can revisit that every year.
Yeah.
So as the children start to grow and they start to grow as a parent, things will adjust and change. It's kind of like almost like a little yearbook of their journey, you know, because their perspective is going to change as well. And that's good testament to how well you're doing.
And then you get to see, like, this is how far we've come. And then, you know, I mean, imagine somebody that's gone through the entire cycle and there's just having that. That'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would love that. And again, like, I think guides do that for children, you know, in their own way and in variations, but we don't do that for parents, and how transformative that could be. I want that. I want my school to do it today.
Comment. So Heidi said, would love a goal setting template. Cool. I'll work on it. I don't know that I'm the right person to complete it. I think maybe what I'll do is start something vague, and then, because I'm not a Montessorian, and then maybe Deneen hand it to you, or we could even open it up to the group and kind of, you know, massage it to where it's actually functional.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure Matt would have some thoughts too, because I know he's working on parent journey in his school. He's really trying to figure out how to map that.
I'm going to make a note.
Which, by the way, shameless plug, I'm speaking on this particular topic called Mapping Parent Journey in DC in 2 weeks. Just bought my plane ticket. So
Yeah.
It'll be
And
fun.
we
So
sent out a PDF on that on the last email. So if you got the email, open up the PDF and you can see where Deneen is. And
yeah,
yeah,
I would love to see if someone, because we've got a few members out east. So
we
hopefully we
do.
can
Well,
join.
DC is so easy to get to. I mean, it's like the epicenter of the East.
Yeah, we were there last year for the Amos conference.
Yeah. All roads lead. Yeah.
Right. Well, there's like 3 airports you can fly into to get there, which is interesting. And they're all within like a 40-mile radius.
Yeah. Are you recording it?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
I'm undecided. I mean, I have a lot of practice, right? Because I do this. I've been doing this for almost 2 years now. So I shouldn't be nervous, but I kind of am.
I think you should record it no matter what and then decide whether or not you release the recording.
Yeah.
You don't want to do the talking and not have the, well, I'll talk to you into it later.
Sure.
Mary Jen said, yes, please, sound great. That's great. And Christina Fox, brilliant tool for evaluating teachers too. Oh, interesting. I didn't think about that. That could be kind of part of the teacher's goal setting setup.
Huh. Like professional development. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Which we just talked about last week. We had Simi and Tammy on, and this could be a really good way. It's like it's a development plan, basically.
Awesome. I'm going to go work on that goal setting template.
Cool.
I wonder if that should be in an online form. I'll figure it out. And then how did this call go just from our listeners? Is this effective? I'm asking 2 questions actually, which I know I just said not to do, but again, I'm a hypocrite. This call specifically, did we address your questions? And then also the cadence that we're currently in where we have 3 phone calls for every topic. And one is the introduction, one is specific implementation, and then one is hot seat. Is that working out for everybody? Or are we all kind of liking that?
Right.
Love the cadence. Awesome. That's great. Cool. Well, next week, hopefully, and that's a big order, but hopefully I can come to the table if we're going to, spitball a little bit, and I'll come to the table with some things ready to hot seat. And if anybody wants to volunteer to jump on the hot seat, then we can talk about and build your school's sales process, and we'll do that live. So if you want to get here's what I'll offer. For anybody who wants to hot seat, we'll do a free CRM build out and customization in the opportunity section, that pipeline that you just saw, and we'll do it live on the coaching call. And what's nice about that is you have to talk through every single step. So it's going to be really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I do think I will be there. There's just a few things that I have to adjust, but I most likely will be there next week.
Awesome. Yeah. Otherwise, I'll bore everybody to sleep.
Hopefully we'll get somebody on too.
Oh, no. I'm sorry, Christina. We'll have you on next time. And these are all recorded as well, by the way. So if you ever want to revisit any of our coaching calls, they'll be on Nito's site. Really grateful for everybody showing up. We had a nice showing today.
Yeah, I mean, this is very valuable information. So I imagine, I'm going to actually go back and revisit this conversation because it's so key and so essential to our processes.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Thanks, Awesome, for your thoughts.
Yeah, it was a good talk. I will see y'all next Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern, and we'll talk about selling Montessori.
All right. Sounds good. Bye, everyone.